The hum of the Cadillac was a familiar lullaby, a constant drone that underscored the relentless rhythm of Elvis Presley's life. Outside the tinted windows, the world blurred into an indistinguishable wash of greens and browns, occasionally punctuated by a flash of concrete or the glint of a distant building. He leaned back against the plush leather seat, his eyes closed, the weight of the past few weeks pressing down on him like a physical burden. Another show, another roar of adoring fans, another 1,000 flashing bulbs. It was exhilarating. Yes, a wild, beautiful beast, but it was also exhausting. Fame was a gilded cage, magnificent and suffocating all at once. Every move was calculated, every word dissected, every moment observed. He missed the simple things, the anonymity of a casual stroll, the quiet peace of a forgotten afternoon. The motorcade, a sleek procession of dark cars, was a testament to his untouchable status, a mobile fortress designed to keep the world out and Elvis in. Colonel Parker, his manager, sat across from him, a stout, unyielding presence, occasionally rustling a stack of papers or muttering into a phone. Business never stopped, money never slept. They were on their way to a brief respite at a private estate before the next leg of the tour, a fleeting moment of peace before the whirlwind began anew. Elvis sighed, running a hand through his perfectly coiffed hair. He opened his eyes, letting his gaze drift out the window. They were passing through a stretch of what looked like older suburbs. Houses nestled among mature trees, lawns dotted with sprinklers. It was a slice of Americana, ordinary and vibrant, a world away from the sterile luxury of his current existence. And then he saw it. Nestled precariously on a patch of sun-baked grass beside a chipped mailbox was a small, ramshackle lemonade stand. It was a sight so utterly out of place in the context of his high-speed, high-stakes life that it jolted him. The stand itself looked like it had been cobbled together from spare planks of wood, painted a cheerful but streaky yellow. A hand-drawn sign, tilted slightly, proclaimed in childish, uneven letters, "Lemonade, 25. Two kids stood behind it. One, a boy who looked to be around 10 or 11, was earnestly fanning himself with a piece of cardboard. The other, a younger girl with bright pigtails, was meticulously polishing a plastic cup with a worn cloth. They looked hot, a little bored, and entirely hopeful. Their faces were smudged with what might have been dirt, or maybe just the residue of a particularly ambitious summer day. A strange feeling washed over Elvis, a pang of nostalgia. Perhaps he remembered those days back in Tupelo, then Memphis, when a quarter felt like a fortune, and the simple act of creating something, even a glass of tart lemonade, was a triumph. He remembered the fierce determination, the optimism that shimmered in the heat of a summer afternoon, the belief that anything was possible. His driver, a burly man named Frank, was focused on the road, maintaining the precise speed. The other cars in the motorcade followed in perfect formation. They were a well-oiled machine. Efficient and unstoppable stopping was simply not an option. It wasn't in the itinerary. It wasn't in the contract. It wasn't in the nature of how Elvis Presley moved through the world. But Elvis found himself leaning forward, his eyes still fixed on the small, unassuming stand. The girl looked up, caught his eye for a split second, and offered a shy, hopeful smile. It was an innocent gesture, utterly devoid of the usual fawning or hysteria that followed him everywhere. Just a simple, hopeful smile from a kid trying to sell some lemonade. Frank, or Elvis said, his voice cutting through the car's quiet hum. Frank flinched, slightly surprised by the sudden interruption to the silence. "Yes, Mr. Presley, pull over." Frank's eyes flickered to the rearview mirror, then back to the road. "Sir, we're on schedule. The highway is just ahead." Colonel Parker, who had been engrossed in his papers, looked up sharply. "Pull over, Elvis. What are you talking about? We have a security protocol, a timeline. We can't—" "Just—" Elvis turned his gaze unwavering as he met Parker's eyes. There was a quiet intensity there, a flicker of the power that commanded millions, but also a deeper, more personal yearning. I said, "Pull over. I want a lemonade." Parker's mouth opened and closed. He looked from Elvis to Frank, then out the window at the approaching lemonade stand, which was now rapidly receding in their peripheral vision. He knew that look. When Elvis had that look, there was no arguing. It was a rare occurrence for him to make such an impromptu demand, but when he did, it was usually for something deeply personal, something that touched him. Frank hesitated for another beat, then nodded. Understood, Mr. Presley. He flicked a signal, and the powerful Cadillac began to slow. Its deceleration communicated instantly to the cars behind it. The sleek, black procession, a symbol of power and untouchability, began to grind to a halt in the most unexpected of places, a quiet suburban street, right beside a child's lemonade stand. For Elvis, it felt like the first breath he'd truly taken all day. The sudden slowing of the motorcade was an event in itself. Cadillac's powerful brakes whispered as it eased to a stop. The two following sedans in the lead car, all part of Elvis's security detail, followed suit, their synchronized halt a testament to their training and the unusual command. The street, usually quiet save for the distant hum of traffic, was now filled with the low rumble of idling engines and the surprised chirping of cicadas. Inside the car, Colonel Parker was already on his phone, his voice a low, urgent murmur. "What's the situation? Keep a perimeter. No one approaches the vehicle." He looked at Elvis, a mixture of exasperation and grudging respect on his face. "Elvis, this is highly unorthodox. It could compromise our security. A crowd could form in minutes." Elvis just smiled, a genuine, unforced smile that hadn't graced his face in days. "Relax, Colonel. It's just a lemonade stand. I'll be back in a minute." He reached for the door handle. Outside at the lemonade stand, the world had come to a standstill for Leo and Mona. Leo, the older brother, had been fanning himself, lost in thoughts of how many more cups they'd need to sell to reach their goal. Mona, absorbed in polishing her plastic cup, was humming a made-up tune. They'd seen the black cars approaching, a blur of dark metal and tinted windows. They knew it was some kind of important convoy, maybe a government official, maybe a rich businessman. They certainly didn't expect them to stop. Then the lead car, the big one in front, slowed. And then it stopped, right in front of their stand. Leo's fanning stopped. Their heads slowly swiveled, eyes wide, fixed on the gleaming black Cadillac. The tinted window of the passenger side slowly, silently rolled down. A man, shadowed by the deep tint, was visible within. His dark hair was slicked back, a glimpse of a dazzling smile. The air crackled with a strange, undeniable energy. Then the car door opened. Collective gasp, soft but audible, escaped the lips of Leo and Mona. They couldn't quite process what they were seeing. Out of the car stepped a man who seemed to shimmer in the afternoon sun. He was taller than they expected, dressed in a sleek suit, an aura of undeniable charisma radiating from him. His hair, dark and perfectly coiffed, caught the light. He wore sunglasses, so his eyes were hidden, but even so, the recognition hit them like a bolt of lightning. It was him. It had to be. Behind him, two more men, large and serious-looking, emerged from the other cars, their eyes scanning the surroundings, their posture rigid. They moved with a silent, disciplined efficiency, immediately forming a subtle perimeter around the gleaming motorcade and the man who had just stepped out, Elvis Presley, the king, standing on their street heading towards their lemonade stand. Leo's heart hammered against his ribs. He had seen him on TV, heard his songs on the radio a million times. But seeing him in person, it was unreal. He was an icon, a legend, a living myth, and he was walking towards them. Mona, usually a chatterbox, was utterly speechless. Her eyes, wide as saucers, were fixed on Elvis. She dropped the plastic cup she was polishing, and it bounced softly on the grass, forgot. Tiny gasp escaped her lips, a sound of pure, unadulterated awe. She wasn't just looking at a celebrity. She was looking at magic. Elvis, for his part, felt a strange sense of liberation as his feet touched the warm pavement. The sounds of the idling engines, the distant chirping of birds, the scent of fresh-cut grass. It was all so real, so different from the artificial environments he usually inhabited. He pulled off his sunglasses, letting his famous blue eyes take in the scene. The kids, frozen in their spot behind the rickety stand, looked like they'd seen a ghost. Their faces, already smudged, now showed a mixture of utter shock and burgeoning excitement. The boy Leo was trying to maintain a semblance of composure, but his lower lip trembled slightly. The girl Mona just stared, her mouth slightly agape. A slow smile spread across Elvis's face. This was it. This was the moment of connection he sometimes craved, the genuine, unscripted human interaction that fame so often denied him. Took a step forward, then another, closing the small distance between the world of legends and a simple lemonade stand. "Well, now," Elvis drawled, his voice so familiar to millions, a warm, melodic sound in the quiet afternoon. "What do we have here?" He wasn't just a star anymore. In this moment, on this quiet street, he was just a man looking for a simple taste of summer and perhaps a touch of something real. The stage was set not for a grand performance, but for a truly heartwarming scene. Elvis walked towards the stand, his presence radiating a warmth that, despite the initial shock, seemed to put the children slightly at ease. He wasn't the roaring king of the stage right now. He was just a remarkably well-dressed, very famous man with a kind smile. "Afternoon, folks," Elvis greeted, his voice a smooth, friendly rumble. He stopped a few feet from the stand, taking in the homemade sign, the slightly wobbly structure, and the two wide-eyed children behind it. "Looks like I found the best refreshment stand in town." Leo, the boy, finally found his voice, though it came out as a barely audible squeak. "Mr. Presley?" Elvis chuckled softly. "That's me, son. And what are your names?" "I'm Leo," the boy managed, his voice gaining a touch more confidence. "And this is my sister, Mona." Mona, still too stunned to speak, simply nodded vigorously, her pigtails bouncing. Her eyes, however, never left Elvis's face. She was mesmerized. A real-life fairy tale character suddenly standing before her. "Leo, Mona," Elvis repeated, a genuine smile playing on his lips. "It's a pleasure to meet you both. You got any of that lemonade ready?" "Oh yes, we do," Leo stammered, scrambling for a clean cup. His hands were shaking slightly, making him fumble with the pitcher. The ice tinkled invitingly. Mona, perhaps sensing her brother's nervousness, quietly picked up her dropped cup and offered it to Leo. "Thank you, Mona," Leo whispered, taking the cup. He poured the lemonade, the liquid a bright, inviting yellow. He tried to make it look professional, but a little splashed over the side onto the wooden counter. He winced, but Elvis didn't seem to notice. Or if he did, he certainly didn't care. "Looks perfect," Elvis said, his eyes twinkling. He reached into his suit jacket and pulled out a crisp dollar bill. "How much is it?" It's 25 cents, Leo mumbled, his eyes on the dollar. It felt like holding a lottery ticket. 25 cents, huh? Elvis took the cup, a smile still playing on his lips. "Well, I think I'll have a taste of this famous lemonade then." He took a long, slow sip. The lemonade was cold, tart, and surprisingly refreshing. It wasn't the fancy bottled kind he was used to. It tasted like summer, like childhood, like sunshine and simple joy. It tasted real. It was exactly what he needed. He hummed, a sound of genuine pleasure. "That is good. That is very good. Lemonade best I've had in a long time." He took another sip, savoring it. "You two make this yourselves?" "Yes, sir," Mona piped up, her voice surprisingly loud and clear, finally breaking through her awe. "We squeezed all the lemons." "And we added just the right amount of sugar," Leo added proudly. Elvis nodded, impressed. I can tell. It's got that perfect balance. You've got a real knack for this." He finished the cup feeling truly refreshed. He handed the empty cup back to Leo. "All right, here's your $1, son." Leo took the bill with trembling fingers. "Thank you, Mr. Presley." Do you want your change back?" he asked, already fumbling for his small coin purse. Elvis laughed, a deep, warm sound. "Keep the change, Leo. Consider it a tip for such excellent service and such a delicious drink." Colonel Parker, who had positioned himself a discreet distance away, watched the interaction with a mixture of bewilderment and grudging amusement. He'd seen Elvis charm stadiums of thousands, but to see him so genuinely engaged with 2 little kids in a lemonade stand was something else entirely. The security detail remained vigilant, their eyes constantly scanning, but even they seemed slightly less tense. Perhaps sensing the innocent nature of the stop, Elvis leaned slightly against the stand. His posture relaxed. He wasn't in a hurry anymore. The hum of the motorcade faded into the background. For a brief moment, he was just a man enjoying a quiet afternoon, talking to 2 earnest kids. "So," Elvis began, his gaze sweeping over their small setup, "why are you selling lemonade today? Saving up for something special?" He looked at their bright, hopeful faces, and sensed there was more to their story than just a simple summer venture. Leo and Mona exchanged a glance, their earlier nervousness replaced by a bubbling excitement. This wasn't just a customer, this was Elvis Presley asking about their lives. And their story was a big one, a secret mission they were desperate to achieve. Leo hesitated for a moment, glancing at Mona, then back at Elvis. Probably expected a simple answer like, for candy or for a new toy, but their reason was much bigger than that. It was something they had poured their hearts and souls into, even if it felt like an impossible task. "Well, Mr. Presley," Leo began, his voice a little shaky but full of conviction, "it's not for us, not really." Elvis raised an eyebrow, intrigued. "Oh, then, who's it for?" Mona, unable to contain her excitement any longer, practically burst. "It's for the community center. The Elmwood Community Center." Elvis looked from Mona's enthusiastic face to Leo's earnest one. "The community center? What about it?" Leo took over, explaining with a mix of frustration and passion. "They're going to close it, Mr. Presley. Unless they get enough money for the repairs. The roof leaks really bad, and the heating system is broken, and the old stage where they used to have plays and concerts. It's all falling apart, and they'll have to take away the little library part too, and Mrs. Higgins's knitting club won't have anywhere to go. And the after-school program," her voice trailed off. A picture of pure devastation. Elvis felt a familiar tug at his heart. He remembered places like that, community hubs, in his own youth, places where people gathered, where dreams were nurtured, where children found a safe haven. To think of one closing down because of disrepair, it just felt wrong. "So you 2 are trying to save it?" Elvis asked softly, looking at their determined faces. "Yes, sir. Our mom works there sometimes, and she said they need a lot of money. Like, a lot. So we thought if we sold lemonade every day, maybe we could help." He gestured vaguely at their small stand, a hint of desperation in his eyes. It was a monumental goal for 2 kids with a lemonade stand. "How much do they need?" Elvis asked, his voice gentle. Leo winced. "Mom said they need $50,000 for all the repairs." $50,000? Elvis's eyes widened slightly. For a superstar like him, that was a significant sum, but manageable. For 2 kids selling lemonade at 25 cents a cup, it was an astronomical, almost laughable figure. He looked at their brave, hopeful faces and felt a surge of admiration mixed with a pang of sadness at the sheer impossibility of their self-imposed task. $50,000, huh? Elvis mused, stroking his chin. "We know," Mona mumbled, her earlier excitement replaced by a touch of weariness. We've been doing it for 2 weeks already, every day, and we've only made. She looked at Leo, who picked up a small decorated jar sitting on the stand. Leo unscrewed the lid and carefully tipped the jar, revealing a meager collection of quarters, dimes, and a few crumpled dollar bills. He counted them out loud, his voice flat. $107.50. He looked up at Elvis, a hopeful but defeated expression on his face. We thought, maybe if we worked all summer, we could get to $500. $500, a drop in the bucket compared to $50,000. The gap between their valiant effort and the actual need was vast. A chasm that no amount of child-powered lemonade sales could ever bridge. Elvis looked at the jar, then at the earnest, hopeful faces of Leo and Mona. He saw their dedication, their love for their community, their innocent belief that their small actions could make a big difference. It reminded him of his own humble beginnings, of the times when every dollar, every cent was hard-earned and precious. He knew what it felt like to have a dream that seemed too big, too impossible, but to keep fighting for it anyway. A quiet decision formed in his mind. It wasn't about the money, not really. It was about seeing that spark of good, that pure intention, and being able to fan it into a flame. It was about making an impossible dream for 2 earnest children a reality. He thought of all the money he spent on frivolous things, on cars, on clothes, on gifts for his entourage. What was a fraction of that compared to the genuine joy and lasting impact he could create right here, right now? Colonel Parker, who had been listening to the conversation with a growing sense of unease, now stepped closer. "Elvis, perhaps we should get going. We're running behind." His tone was polite but firm. A clear signal that this impromptu stop had gone on long enough. Elvis didn't even glance at Parker. His eyes were fixed on Leo and Mona, a warm, thoughtful expression on his face. He took a deep breath, and then a slow, knowing smile spread across his lips. "You know what?" Elvis said, his voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper, as if sharing a secret with them. "I think I might be able to help you reach that goal a little faster. In fact, I think I might just be your biggest customer yet." Leo and Mona blinked, utterly confused. Their biggest customer? What could he possibly mean? Leo and Mona looked at each other, then back at Elvis, their confusion evident. Their biggest customer? Had he not understood the goal? How could one person buy enough lemonade to make a dent in $50,000? Even if he bought all their lemonade, it was barely a gallon's worth, Elvis chuckled, sensing their bewilderment. "Well now," he said, pushing himself off the lemonade stand, standing tall, "I didn't say I was going to buy all your lemonade cups. What I mean is, I'm going to buy your whole project." Leo's brow furrowed. "Our whole project, but it's not finished. We've only just started." "Exactly," Elvis said, his smile widening. "And it's a very noble project, saving your community center. That's a grand thing you're doing, Leo and Mona. Most kids your age are thinking about ice cream, not leaky roofs." He paused, letting his words sink in. "And because it's such a grand thing, it deserves a grand gesture." Colonel Parker, who had been subtly checking his watch, now looked at Elvis with a look of dawning comprehension, mixed with growing alarm. He had a premonition, a cold dread in his stomach that told him Elvis was about to do something significant, something generous, and something entirely unplanned for. "Elvis," Parker said, his voice a low warning, "we really must consider the schedule and the security implications of drawing attention here." Elvis just waved a dismissive hand, not even turning his head. "Relax, Colonel. This is important." He turned back to the kids, his expression serious now, but with an underlying warmth. "So you said the community center needs $50,000, right?" Leo nodded, his throat suddenly dry. "Yes, sir." "And you've raised $107.50, Elvis confirmed, glancing at the jar. "That's a good start. A very good start. It shows dedication." Paused, letting the silence hang in the air for a moment. "How about," Elvis began, his voice dropping slightly, "we make up the difference?" Leo and Mona exchanged another glance, then looked back at Elvis, their expressions still a mix of confusion and hesitant hope. Make up the difference. What did that even mean? Was he going to donate another $100, $1,000? To them, even $1,000 would be an unimaginable fortune. Elvis saw the gears turning in their young minds, trying to grasp the scale of what he was implying. He didn't want to just hand them a check and leave. He wanted them to understand that their effort, however small, had inspired him. You know, Elvis continued, I grew up in a small town too. We had places like that community center. They were the heart of everything. And sometimes it just takes one big push to get things going, to save something important. I've been lucky, very lucky in my life. And I believe in giving back, especially to good causes and to people who are trying to make a difference. He knelt down slightly, so he was more at their eye level. You two are making a difference. You're showing your community what it means to work hard for something you believe in, and that's worth more than any lemonade. Leo's eyes were starting to widen. Mona was riveted on Elvis. They were starting to understand, not just a small donation, something more, but how much more. So, here's what I propose, Elvis said, a twinkle in his eye. You keep selling your lemonade. It's a great product and it shows your spirit. But I'm going to make sure that community center gets all the money it needs. Every last dollar of that $50,000. He stood up, his gaze sweeping over the kids, then towards Colonel Parker, who was now fully aware of what was about to happen. Parker sighed, resigned, but a small flicker of admiration passed through his eyes. He knew Elvis had a generous heart, sometimes too generous for a manager's liking. But moments like these were part of what made him the king. Not just on stage, but in the hearts of people. Frank Elvis called out to his driver, who was standing respectfully by the car. Could you bring me my wallet, the big one? Frank, used to Elvis's unpredictable requests, immediately moved to comply. He opened the back door of the Cadillac and retrieved the large, well-worn leather wallet from the glove compartment. Leo and Mona watched utterly mesmerized as Frank approached and handed the wallet to Elvis. The weight of the moment was settling on them, a profound sense of something truly unbelievable about to unfold. Their eyes darted from Elvis to the wallet and to each other. Could it be true? Could this impossibly famous man really be about to do what he was hinting at? The very idea was too grand to comprehend. The sun beat down, the cicadas hummed, and the quiet suburban street held its breath, waiting for the unveiling of a king's unexpected kindness. Elvis took the large wallet from Frank, his movements deliberate. Leo and Mona watched, their hearts thumping in their chests. The world seemed to narrow to this small, sun-drenched patch of grass, this rickety lemonade stand, and the man who was about to change their lives. Elvis opened the wallet. It was thick-packed with crisp bills. Not just a few tens or twenties, but bundles of hundreds, tightly packed. He didn't even count them. He just pulled out a stack thick enough to make a substantial brick, and then another. Colonel Parker, seeing the sheer volume of cash, winced imperceptibly. Preferred transactions to be done through official channels, with proper documentation. But Elvis was an artist, and sometimes artists preferred to make their statements with grand, sweeping gestures. Elvis held the stacks of money in his hand, a fortune in plain sight. He then looked directly at Leo and Mona, their eyes wide with a mixture of fear and wonder. You said $50,000, right? Elvis asked again, his voice gentle. For the Elmwood Community Center to fix the roof, the heating, the stage, and save the library, all of it. Leo could only nod, his mouth too dry to speak. Mona simply stared, her face pale with disbelief. With a flourish that was both dramatic and genuinely heartfelt, Elvis extended his hand, placing the thick wads of cash directly onto the flimsy wooden counter of the lemonade stand. The money sat there, a vibrant green mountain against the yellow paint, so much of it that it almost seemed to overflow the small space. It was more money than Leo had ever seen in his entire life piled together. More than his parents made in a year. More than the entire contents of their small town's bank, it seemed. There, Elvis said, his voice soft but firm, that should cover it. And then some, enough to make sure that community center shines again brighter than ever. He leaned in slightly, his voice dropping to a near whisper. And a little extra for you two for being such good kids and for having such big hearts. Go get yourselves some ice cream, or whatever you want. Leo reached out a trembling hand, poking the top of the stack of bills. It felt real. It felt impossibly real. He looked at Elvis, then at Mona. Mona's eyes were glistening and a single tear traced a path down her smudged cheek. She wasn't just crying, she was openly weeping, soft, choked sobs of overwhelming joy and disbelief. Mr. Presley, Leo finally managed to choke out, his voice hoarse. This is too much. This is amazing. We can't take all this. Elvis smiled, a knowing, compassionate smile. Nonsense. You've earned it with your spirit and your hard work. Consider it an investment in your community and in your future, and the future of that community center. He winked. Just promise me one thing. You'll make sure they fix that stage. Maybe I'll even come back and play a concert there sometime. The thought of Elvis Presley playing a concert at their little, dilapidated community center was almost too much for Leo. He felt dizzy with the enormity of the moment. "Oh, Mr. Presley," Mona sobbed. She lunged forward, her small arms wrapping tightly around Elvis's leg in a spontaneous, genuine hug. Elvis, momentarily surprised, smiled and gently patted her head. There, little one. It's all right. Happy tears, I hope." Mona nodded vigorously, her face buried against his leg. "Yes, happy tears. Thank you. Colonel Parker cleared his throat, sensing the moment was both touching and, from a security standpoint, increasingly precarious. "Elvis, perhaps a quick autograph. If the children would like." He was trying to steer the situation back to some semblance of the usual celebrity interaction. Elvis straightened up, carefully detaching Mona from his leg. "Good idea, Colonel." Took a pen from Parker, and with a flourish signed the Lemonade 25. Twine. To Leo and Mona, with thanks for the best lemonade and the biggest hearts. Elvis Presley. He then stood for a quick photo, kneeling slightly so he was level with the children, his arm around Mona, Leo beaming beside them, clutching the small money jar and staring at the stacks of cash. It was a fleeting moment, captured by one of the security detail, with a small camera, a private memory, and a public life. The money shimmered in the sun, a beacon of hope on a simple wooden stand. The magnitude of Elvis's generosity was staggering, and Leo and Mona could only stare, overwhelmed, at the unbelievable reality unfolding before their eyes. Their impossible dream had just been, with a single generous gesture, made wonderfully, unbelievably real. The camera clicked, capturing the moment. Elvis straightened up, his face still lit with the genuine warmth of the interaction. He looked at Leo, who was still staring at the money, as if it might vanish into thin air. "All right, Leo," Elvis said, his voice firm but kind. "You make sure that money goes to the community center. You tell them Elvis Presley said that stage needs to be fixed, and the library, and everything else." Leo, finally finding his voice beyond the initial shock, stammered, I will, Mr. Presley. I promise. Thank you. Thank you so much. We never." He trailed off, unable to articulate the enormity of what had just happened. Mona, having composed herself slightly, looked up at Elvis with adoration in her eyes. "You're the best, Mr. Presley. The best king ever." Elvis ruffled her hair playfully. "Well, I certainly try, little one. You two keep up the good work. Don't ever stop believing in what you can achieve." He glanced at the remaining lemonade in the pitcher. "And keep selling that lemonade. It's truly delicious." Took one last look at the money. A small, satisfied smile on his face. This was better than any performance, any chart-topping hit. This was real impact, real connection. He had a profound sense of lightness, a feeling of having done something truly meaningful, something that transcended the glitter and demands of his fame. Colonel Parker, ever practical, stepped forward. "All right, Elvis, time to go. The road awaits." They had lingered far longer than planned, and while the street remained surprisingly quiet, the longer they stayed, the greater the risk of curious neighbors spotting the motorcade. Elvis nodded, a slight sigh escaping his lips. The bubble of quiet normalcy was about to pop, and he would be back in the whirlwind. But this moment, this unexpected pause, had recharged something within him. "It was a pleasure meeting you both. Leo, Mona," Elvis said, offering them one last warm smile. "You remember what I said?" Turned and strode back towards the Cadillac, his security detail already opening the door for him. He slipped back into the plush interior, the leather cool against his back. As the door closed with a soft thud, the tinted windows slid up, sealing him back into his private world. The motorcade hummed to life, the lead car signaling, and then slowly, majestically, the procession began to move forward. The lemonade stand and the two utterly dumbfounded children slowly receded in the rearview mirror. Inside the car, the silence was different now. It wasn't the heavy, tired silence. From the Farker looked at Elvis. "Well, that was certainly an expenditure. Elvis, you know that money was set aside for the new wardrobe and the studio session." There was exasperation in his voice, but it was tempered with a grudging respect. $50,000, just like that for a lemonade stand. Elvis leaned back, a beatific smile on his face. "Best $50,000 I ever spent, Colonel. Did you see their faces? That's worth more than any new suit. Or 1,000 more records. That's real." Parker grunted but didn't argue. He knew that sometimes Elvis just had to follow his heart, no matter the financial or logistical implications. And in moments like these, it was hard to argue with the pure, unadulterated joy that radiated from the king. Meanwhile, back on the street, Leo and Mona stood frozen, the stacks of cash, a bewildering, incredible reality on their humble stand. Mona sniffled, wiping her eyes, then stared at the money. Leo, tentatively, reached out, picking up a bundle of bills. "Leo," Mona whispered, her voice full of awe. "Did that just happen? Was that really Elvis?" Leo looked at the signed lemonade sign, then at the cash. "Yeah, Mona," he breathed, his voice barely a whisper. "That was him. And he just saved the community center at that very moment." A car pulled up down the street. It was their mom, Mrs. Davison, home from her shift at the grocery store. She saw the lingering black tire marks on the asphalt and the unusually high number of neighbors peeking out their windows. She also saw her two children standing beside their lemonade stand, staring wide-eyed and speechless at a pile of money that seemed to glow in the late afternoon sun. Her brow furrowed in confusion. Something extraordinary had clearly just occurred. As the motorcade gained speed, leaving the quiet street behind, Elvis stared out the window. The image of Leo and Mona, their faces a mixture of shock and elation, burned into his mind. He felt a profound sense of peace, a quiet contentment that had been elusive for a long time. The roar of the crowd, the flash of the cameras, the constant demands of his career, they all faded into the background, replaced by the simple, pure joy of a selfless act. "You know," Colonel Elvis said, breaking the silence in the car, "sometimes it's not about the big stages. Sometimes it's about the small moments, the ones that nobody expects, the ones that touch you right here." He tapped his chest over his heart. Parker grunted. "Well, Mr. Presley, I certainly hope this small moment doesn't turn into a major security incident. When the word gets out, people hear you stopped for a lemonade stand. Next thing you know, there's a riot in front of every kid with a pitcher. Let them, maybe a few more community centers will get saved. Maybe a few more kids will learn that kindness matters." He leaned back, closing his eyes, a serene expression on his face. The exhaustion was still there, but it was a different kind of tired now, a satisfying fatigue that came from a good day's work, not just another performance. Thought of his own childhood, the struggles, the generosity of strangers that sometimes made all the difference. This was his chance to be that stranger, that unexpected blessing. Meanwhile, back on Elmwood Street, Mrs. Davison, Leo, and Nona's mother cautiously approached the lemonade stand. She had parked her car and walked towards her children, a knot of worry tightening in her stomach. Why were Leo and Mona so pale, and what was that large green pile on the counter? "Leo, Mona, what in the world is going on here?" she asked, her voice tinged with concern. Leo, still in a daze, pointed a shaky finger at the money. Mom, it was Elvis Presley. He stopped. He bought our lemonade. And then he gave us this." Mrs. Davison's eyes widened. First at the mention of Elvis Presley, then at the sheer, unbelievable volume of cash. Her jaw dropped. "Elvis Presley here, and he gave you this." She reached out, a hesitant hand touching the top of the stack. It was real, very real. "How much is this?" Theo, finally finding his voice, choked out. He said it was for the community center. All of it, $50,000 and some extra. He then relayed the story, his words tumbling out, breathless and excited. How the black cars stopped. How Elvis got out, how kind he was. How he drank their lemonade. And how he simply astonishingly put the stacks of cash on their stand. Mona, still tearful, but beaming, chimed in with her own details, particularly about Elvis signing their sign and the hug. Mrs. Davison felt a dizzying mix of emotions. Shock, disbelief, overwhelming gratitude, and a healthy dose of concern. $50,000, she whispered, her voice barely audible. For the community center, but why? He said we had big hearts, Mona explained proudly, and he liked our lemonade. Mrs. Davison sank onto the small wooden stool they sometimes used. It was too much to process. The community center. A place she cherished, a place that was a lifeline for so many in their struggling neighborhood, was truly on the brink of closure. The fundraising efforts had been slow, disheartening miracle. "We have to call Mr. Henderson at the center right away," she said, her voice filled with urgency. "We have to tell him. But how do we even explain this? He'll never believe us." Leo pointed to the signed lemonade sign. "He signed it, Mom." And Mona hugged him. Mrs. Davison looked at the elegant signature, then back at the children's glowing faces. It was unbelievable, yet undeniably true. Elvis Presley, the king of rock and roll, had stopped on their street, bought their lemonade, and with a single magnificent gesture saved their community center. The echo of his generosity was already beginning to ripple, a quiet but powerful force through their lives and their small neighborhood. The news, as miraculous as it was, spread like wildfire through the Elmwood community. At first it was whispered disbelievingly, "Did you hear Mrs. Davison's kids?" Elvis Presley stopped at their lemonade stand. Then the details solidified, confirmed by Mrs. Davison herself, who spent hours on the phone with a stunned and emotional Mr. Henderson, the director of the Elmwood Community Center. Mr. Henderson, a man who had been close to despair over the center's impending closure, initially thought it was a prank call. $50,000 from a lemonade stand in Elvis Presley? His voice had been incredulous. But when Mrs. Davison produced the signed lemonade stand sign and brought the physical cash to him the next day, his skepticism turned into profound, tearful gratitude. The local newspaper, a small weekly publication, ran the story on its front page. King of Rock and Roll saves Elmwood Community Center. It wasn't a national headline, but in their small town it was the biggest news in years. The picture showed a beaming Leo and Mona, standing proudly beside beaming Mr. Henderson holding up the stacks of money. There was a blurry, distant photo of the motorcade, taken by a curious neighbor, but the focus was on the local heroes. Leo and Mona became local celebrities overnight. Their lemonade stand, once a quiet, hopeful venture, became a pilgrimage site. People came from all over town not just to buy lemonade, though they kept selling it, now charging $1 a cup, with all proceeds still going to the center's ongoing maintenance fund, but to see the famous signed sign, to hear the story from the kids themselves. The community, already disheartened by the center's possible closure, was revitalized. Elvis's act of kindness ignited a spark of hope and collective action. Inspired by the sudden, overwhelming generosity and by the kids' unwavering dedication, other local businesses and residents started contributing too. The initial $50,000 was just the beginning. Local contractors offered their services at reduced rates. Volunteers flocked to help with the repairs, and donations for new equipment poured in. The leaky roof was fixed, the old, inefficient heating system was replaced, and the stage, once crumbling, was beautifully restored. The small library corner was renovated, new books filled the shelves, and Mrs. Higgins's knitting club found a bright, warm new space. The after-school program, once on the verge of being cut, expanded, offering more classes and activities for the children of Elmwood. Leo and Mona, though still a little overwhelmed by the attention, matured quickly. They understood the power of their small act, amplified by the generosity of a legendary figure. They learned that even the biggest dreams could be achieved, sometimes with a little help from unexpected places. They continued to be involved with the community center, volunteering, helping with events, and always sharing the story of the day Elvis Presley stopped for their lemonade. The Elmwood Community Center, once threatened with closure, thrived. It became a vibrant hub, a testament to the resilience of a community and the extraordinary kindness of a stranger. A small, tasteful plaque was installed near the entrance of the renovated building, reading, "Restored through the extraordinary generosity inspired by two young entrepreneurs and their dedication to this community." Didn't mention Elvis by name, honoring his implied desire for a private act of charity, but everyone in Elmwood knew the story. The ripple effect extended beyond the repairs. The community felt a renewed sense of pride and unity. The story of the lemonade stand became a local legend, passed down from parents to children, a heartwarming reminder that even in a world of complex problems, simple acts of generosity could spark incredible change. It was a story of hope, perseverance, and the unexpected magic of a summer afternoon. Years passed. The Elmwood Community Center flourished, a buzzing hive of activity. The repaired roof held strong against winter storms. The new heating system kept everyone warm, and the stage, polished and ready, hosted school plays, local bands, and community gatherings. The small library was always full, a quiet sanctuary. Leo, still Offermill, went on to study business, always remembering the lesson of their lemonade stand. The true success wasn't just about profit, but about purpose and impact. Mona, with her bright, kind spirit, became a teacher, often telling her students the story of the community center, teaching them about the power of kindness and believing in big dreams. They both volunteered at the center whenever they could, seeing the living legacy of that incredible day. The Lemonade 25's sign, now faded but meticulously preserved, hung in a place of honor in the community center's lobby, encased in a clear box. The faded signature of Elvis Presley was still clearly visible, a silent testament to the King's unexpected visit. Many visitors would pause, read the sign, and whisper the legend of how the King stopped, not for fame or glory, but for a simple cup of lemonade and a heartfelt cause. Far away in the bustling, often chaotic world of superstardom, Elvis Presley continued his reign. There were more concerts, more records, more movies. The adulation of millions was a constant, deafening roar. But sometimes, in a quiet moment between tour stops or late at night in a luxurious hotel suite, his mind would drift back. He'd remember the sun on his face as he stepped out of the car, the silence of the suburban street, the smell of fresh-cut grass. He'd remember Leo's earnest face and Mona's wide-eyed wonder. He'd remember the taste of that tart, real lemonade, so different from anything else in his life. And he'd remember the deep, satisfying feeling of placing those sacks of money on the wobbly wooden counter, seeing the dawning realization in the children's eyes. It was a small, unplanned detour in a life filled with meticulously planned events. A moment that barely registered in the vast public record of his career, overshadowed by stadium shows and sold-out albums. But for Elvis, it remained a precious memory, a quiet reminder of what truly mattered. It wasn't about the size of the gesture, but the heart behind it. He often wondered what became of Leo and Mona and the Elmwood Community Center. He never sought them out, respecting the quiet nature of the act, but he knew with a certainty that settled deep in his soul that he had done something good that day, something that truly made a difference. The king of rock and roll had stopped his motorcade, not for a crowd, not for a performance, but for two kids and their dream. He had given them not just money, but hope, and in doing so had found a piece of quiet joy for himself. It was a testament to the enduring power of human connection, the magic of unexpected kindness, and the heartwarming truth that sometimes the greatest treasures are found not in grand palaces, but beside a simple lemonade stand on an ordinary summer day.